Arasaka, the beacon of justice, hope, and freedom. There is no other trustworthy entity in all of Night City. With Arasaka, countless lives can be saved. Nations freed from their capitalistic ideology that has plagued them from the very start. With Arasaka, we can build a brighter future. Said no one ever. Hopefully you guys liked my attempt at making a mini propaganda video for Arasaka. We all know that they are not good, and today we actually talk about their history and we find out their very beginning and understand what led them from a humble little company in Japan into a megacorp that we all now fear in Cyberpunk 2077. So this is not a full-blown dissection and kind of lore video when it comes to all the individual Arasaka family members. That will be saved for another video. So if you have not yet subscribed, consider subscribing to see that coming up. All right, so let's get right into this. So Japan 1915, Sasai Arasaka officially establishes the Arasaka Corporation. The company was completely different from how we see it in the game. In the very beginning, the company's main focus was manufacturing. This one kind of felt like the time I found out that Samsung, you know, the one that competes with Apple, started things out as a grocery chain in Korea. That's kind of wild, and that's how I felt when I found out that Arasaka actually started things off as a manufacturing company. Anyways, 4 years after the company was created, the spawn of the devil was born. Sometime in 1919, Saburo Arasaka took his first demonic breath. Fast forward about 20 years, the advent of the Second World War. Initially, like I mentioned, I found it so random that Arasaka started things off as manufacturing, but because production for the war effort increased all across Japan, it made so much sense. Mike Pondsmith and co. did an amazing job building a good backstory for the company. Well done, guys. Not only did Arasaka experience growth throughout the war, the company was fortunate enough to have a very smart and opportunistic leader. Sasai foresaw the inevitable defeat of Imperial Japan, and as a result, he began hiding assets throughout the world. Pretty much every modern day big boy drug dealer out there. He was thinking like them, except he wasn't doing drugs, so good for you, Sasai. This was an absolutely genius move. He not only amassed a large amount of wealth during the war because, he's part of manufacturing and they needed airplanes, tanks, boats, and all that fun stuff, but now he also ensured the company's future by hiding those profits. Fast forward to 1945 and we have the surrender of the Emperor. This defeat took a toll on a certain lieutenant. That's right, Saburo took part in the war as part of Japan's Imperial Navy. After hearing the news of surrender, Saburo was preparing to commit seppuku, but at the very last moment, he had an epiphany. Right before he committed seppuku, he understood the genius of his father's work. Remember how his dad dispersed the company assets throughout the world? Yeah, that's what Saburo understood. This was huge. Now, a lot of what I'm about to say about Mr. Saburo himself is my own speculation and or understanding of his character. Saburo was a very traditional Japanese man serving in the Imperial Navy. Now, without going into too much depth, most of these men fought with honor, almost to the point of lunacy. I mean, come on, kamikazes, anyone? We also learn why Saburo was so driven in making Arasaka the economic powerhouse we see in the game. He saw in his epiphany or a vision a Japan rising above the humiliation of losing the war. So I believe the surrender of his nation was more of a shock to him because of how he viewed Japan as a whole. He believed them to being the superior nation, maybe even the superior race. In the game, he refers to Westerners as savages, implicating he views others as lesser creatures or beings. This is great. Honestly, at first, I thought Saburo was just an evil CEO wanting more power through money and blah, blah, blah. Basic company, evil CEO stuff. But we learn that the vision he has is the reason why he is so driven. There are so many ways to honestly go about this. If we go the religious route, how many men of power throughout history have felt that they were chosen to lead the people? If we go the crazy race route, literally in real life, we had a dude, and it was this guy. And this to me was a great villain. In the game, he's not a man who wants more money. He wants to rule the world because of the humiliation he felt when his country was defeated. Honestly, now that I think about it, Saburo sounds like a Hitler. Let me take you back in time in history to the First World War, or the Great War. After that war ended, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. And because Germany caused most of the issues in the war, the treaty unfairly treated the nation. And because of this, many historians believe that the treaty itself played a huge part in causing World War II. Germany was humiliated and outraged by the treaty, and it planted the seeds of hatred and revenge within the German people. If you think about it, this is how Saburo felt, along with the vision he had of Japan rising once again. And then honestly, you get yourself a more, I guess, modern day version of Hitler. Although, like, Saburo was not as crazy and he did not commit terrible crimes like how Hitler did. But you kind of get what I'm trying to go with the similarities. He was not driven by money, but pure revenge. Okay? Hopefully you guys understand where I'm going with that. So now back to Arasaka history. After Saburo had his vision, he knew at that moment what he had to do if he wanted to be the very best, like no one ever was. He would travel across the land, searching far and wide to understand the power that was inside. So to become the very best, he had to study. For in his vision, he saw that Arasaka could rise above all, not by force, but through politics and economics. Let's take a pause here. This old man was a serious thinker. He understood the world. He knew that for his company to grow in power, he had to bide his time, not waiting idly, but he was gathering knowledge. And come on now, guys, we all know knowledge is power. So after the war and during the 50s, Saburo was studying while his father was busy trying to gather the assets he had dispersed throughout the world, laying the foundation for the megacorps we all hate. In the early 60s, the genius that was Sasai passed on, leaving the company in the more than capable hands of his son, Saburo Arasaka. The 50s and the 60s were pretty boring. While the Americans were busy creating fast food and less than efficient cars, Arasaka was growing, but behind the scenes. So yeah, boring. Then the 70s. It was a confusing time for the world. The Beatles had just disbanded. Guitarist legend Jimi Hendrix overdosed. Disney World officially opened. Pong was released, etc., etc. But more importantly, Arasaka shows its teeth by announcing the creation of the Arasaka Securities Division. This was the first time the company showed glimpses of what was to come. The division spearheaded the company in profits along with Arasaka Manufacturing and Arasaka Bank. This move also starts Arasaka's bitter rivalry with fellow megacorp Militech, although the rivalry would not heat up until the late 90s. Anyways, the security division was focused on many things, whether it was security detail for a single client, tech security, corporation security, weaponry, and more. Not only was the division well funded, it was also top of the line. So good that many political and business leaders turned to Arasaka when they needed some sort of protection. Great music, the moonwalk happened. Nope, not that one. This one. The Empire Strikes Back, because honestly Star Wars is the best, and the birth of Kei Arasaka. This guy is probably one of the most interesting Arasaka characters that was not included in the game. His death actually happens in the game, but it's not really like fleshed out. So we'll talk about that in another video. The best decade ever, because your boy Fish was born. More importantly though, Arasaka would feature on the Global 500 list for the first time. Then in 1994, the world market crashed. Because of Saburo's studies, he was able to steer the company clear of any financial crises. Just like how his father had the foresight in the Second World War, Saburo was able to use his knowledge to guide his company into a position of growth. And in that same year, while many companies were experiencing a decline, Arasaka Corporation ranked number 2 on the Global 500 list. Then in 1997, Arasaka Security moved into paramilitary contracting. Oh boy, this is very super important in their history. This was the point of no return for Arasaka. From here on out, they were no longer hiding behind the scenes. Arasaka was beginning to show its true nasty colors. They began to train the world's first corporate army for company use and of course for hire. Like imagine Amazon and Walmart creating armies for hire. That's scary. With this new power in place, Arasaka would begin to bully smaller corporations that were direct competitors. They also began to buy out companies that they felt would improve the overall structure of their own company. This was probably the time that most of our protagonists begin to hate Arasaka. The abuse of power was evident, their scummy business tactics were fully showcased, and the man behind it all was none other than Saburo Arasaka. Oh, and in 1999, Hanako was born. That's kind of funny. Technically, if I lived to like 2077, I would be older than Hanako. I'm not going to get into all that time details. I just hurt my head, so let's just move on. That is it, honestly, for part 1. I'm not entirely sure how part 2 goes. I'm sorry about part 1. Part 1 was a lot of like just facts. There's only so much in-depth stuff that I can do. That's why I tried to explain a little bit more how I felt about Saburo and how I think that there is more to him than just a guy who wants money. He's clearly thinking that he is the best, or that Arasaka or the Japanese people or whatever is better than everyone else. I mean, you guys hear it in his brief conversation with Yorinobu. He talks about the Westerners, again, like I mentioned, being savages. He thinks of them as like a lower species. Even when you read the source books, he just talks about them like, you know, they're above, no, that the Arasakas or Japanese people are above them. So it's just kind of, even the way you see Takamura, the way he talks about Night City, like he kind of disses it all the time. So I guess there's that entitlement, that arrogance, and I like that part of arrogance within Saburo and the Arasaka family, because it kind of gives them something more, and they're not just there for purely money. Like I said, I guess part 2 is going to be literally from the 2000s onward to 2077. So that's going to have a lot of facts that you guys have already heard in my other videos, where I talk about the 2023 attack on the Arasaka Tower at Night City, known as the Night City Holocaust. So with Johnny nuking Tower, that's actually the point where Kei Arasaka passes. So there's just so much packed in all those tiny little events. Well, not tiny, but these events, they have so much more to offer, especially when you read the source books. But that is going to be it for part 1. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Make sure you click that thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.